Good morning, everyone. We will be starting our presentation in a few minutes, giving people a few minutes to find parking and walk up. So we'll be beginning our presentation within 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? Not so easy, actually.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for joining us today for this Transgender Day of Remembrance put on by MNclusive, the employee resource group for the state of Minnesota's Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ employees. We acknowledge this land is native land, and that the state capital stands in the land of the Dakota and Anishinaabe people. Minnesota has been the ancestral homelands of the Dakota people for thousands of years, with the Anishinaabe people migrating here during the 1700s. Minnesota's land base was ceded to the U.S. government by the Anishinaabe and Dakota people during the 1800s. Since then, Native people have fought to maintain their treaty rights, tribal sovereignty, and cultural lifeways. We recognize colonialism is a current and ongoing process, and we choose to be mindful of our present participation and work to do better. We honor the history of this land and the Native people who were here before us and who still are here today. Mourn the dead and fight like hell for the living. Transgender Day of Remembrance calls us to do both. We are here to find the courage and hope, but we are as much here to mourn. And the past year has been especially painful for our community. Our pain abrades from the outside and hollows out from within. These will not always be easy messages to hear. We must also acknowledge that the violence of transphobia most affects my trans siblings who are Black, brown, Indigenous, people of color, and that those siblings are among the least likely to get their stories told, their lives celebrated, or to get a seat at the table. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers this year. Some have had to back out at the last minute, and we hold them and their families in our thoughts. If you would please join me in welcoming to the stage the Chief Equity Officer who will give a presentation, Ashley Ullman.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Storm Ullman, and as Zoe said, I serve the state of Minnesota as Chief Equity Officer. It is my job to translate community priorities into systems change, and to me that means starting with listening, believing, supporting, and protecting people. Thank you, Zoe, and thank you all for being here today to hold a vigil on Transgender Day of Remembrance. Today we honor the memories of trans community members who have been taken by violence. Trans people are over 4 times more likely than cisgender folks to be victims of violent crimes. And violence against trans people, particularly trans people of color, is on the rise in recent years. Many of us know that there are federal executive orders and other actions that have been taken targeting trans people. And this is why policies at the state level are so important. So we gather here today at the state capitol in honor of trans lives taken by violence. And this is a reminder that this is a space for all people, including those most impacted by disparities and injustice. Under the Walz-Flanagan administration, we work to end discrimination and eliminate disparities, including for members of the LGBTQIA2S+ community. To that end, our mission is to make Minnesota the best country, the best state in the country, for children to grow up in. Those of all races, ethnicities, religions, economic statuses, sexual orientations, disabilities, and zip codes, and hell to the yes that it does include trans children too. Minnesota has a history of protecting our trans and gender diverse neighbors. In 1993, Minnesota enacted the first state law expressly protecting its trans community. And in partnership with so many of you in the rotunda today, and arguably beyond partnership, standing behind the leadership of the voices that are in this rotunda today, I'm proud of the policy gains that establish protections for trans individuals under the Walz-Flanagan administration, including enacting legislation that made Minnesota a trans refuge state, creating, I know that's right, I'm going to slow down a little bit because I know that these wins that I'm about to share were not easy to come by. And in these times, it is critical and important to the movement that we take time to celebrate with each other when we've made those gains. All right, including creating the state of Minnesota's LGBTQIA2S+ Council. Passing the Take Pride Act that amended the Human Rights Act to remove outdated language and clearly protect gender identity. Banning the cruel, outdated practice of conversion therapy. And codifying a ban on the LGBTQ panic defense. In establishing and updating these protections for trans individuals and banning outdated practices, this administration supports and defends the trans community and the broader LGBTQ community. I will go into naming a few of the groups responsible for that progress, but while we're still here, if anybody in this space was responsible for lifting that progress forward, I would love it if you would raise your hand so that folks can connect the dots between progress and action. Thank you. I'm going to take a moment to go off script. This year, I have been asked so many times by folks, I've been taken back by how many people have asked me to simply remind us who we are. Remind us how far we've come. Remind us what we're capable of. I've also been met with so much shock in response to the time space that we're living in. And if I'm being honest, that confuses me because my community has talked about violence, right? We've talked about access. We've talked about humanity and dignity for a really, really long time. Many of us in this space today are not surprised by this moment. And yet, because of that, we know there is still so much work to do. Work here in the Capitol, and definitely work outside of the Capitol as well. Members of the trans community are coming to Minnesota seeking refuge, and Minnesotans need to act. We need to continue having conversations with families and within our schools, doctors' offices, and communities to correct misinformation and stand against harmful, dehumanizing policies, rhetoric, and bullying. It starts with words. We must continue putting protections in place, efforts that will protect everyone from our trans elders all the way down to trans and gender diverse kiddos. The babies. Those of you who know me in the space know I'm everybody's auntie. In connecting back to the mission of making Minnesota the best state in the country for kids to grow up in, I want to be clear that we know trans kids exist, and they deserve care and the opportunity to thrive like every other kid. These kids will grow up to be the doctors, teachers, judges, elected officials, members of the military, artists, parents, comedians, the list goes on and on. Parents and leaders that will be leading our state and making sure that we continue to grow and evolve into what we should be. So, before I wrap up and move on to the official proclamation reading, I want to make sure that I thank some specific groups and individuals today for their leadership and efforts to advance justice for the transgender community. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all the speakers that will be here today on a day when we're honoring lives taken by violence, and particularly in the midst of the time space that we are in, when we are reminded that sometimes there will be headwinds. It takes courage and a great deal of emotional energy to continue speaking loudly. So thank you for those of you that are sharing a piece of your story today. Thank you to MNclusive members, That is the employee resource group for state of Minnesota employees. Y'all, we can't offer great policies, programs, and services from the inside if we don't reflect community on the outside. So for those of you in MNclusive that put this together and that continue to make space for queer employees so that the work of the state can reflect those values, those lived experiences, truly thank you for your work. I also want to thank someone that I admire very much, the Minnesota Housing Commissioner Jennifer Ho, who is an incredible leader, goes above and beyond to provide executive sponsorship of the MNclusive ERG, and the commissioner is here with us somewhere in the rotunda today. Thank you, Commissioner Ho. There you are. I'm too small, I'm too short. If I wanted to see people in the front row, I should have stood on the box. Forgive me. Next up, I'm grateful to members of the Queer Caucus and other electeds for their leadership and efforts to create change. Thank you. Here's the thing about state government and really every government, y'all. It doesn't work without the people. Period. So, in addition to all those amazing folks who are working hard from the inside, I also want to make sure to thank the organizations from the outside who are here tabling today for their high degree of community engagement and providing critical resources for our communities. So I'll rattle those names off quickly. MNclusive, P-Fund Foundation, Outfront Minnesota, Transforming Families, the Council on LGBTQIA2S+ Minnesotans, the Aliveness Project, and Reclaim. Thank you. And finally, I especially want to thank every member of the transgender community here today, those that can't be with us today, and most importantly, those who are now ancestors. Trans existence, simply existing as your beautiful selves, is a quiet yet powerful form of activism. We need your voices, your leadership, and your presence in our communities. We want you here, and will continue amplifying your voices to ensure Minnesota is a place where all people can thrive. And that's where I'll end today, by looking to the future. We're here to honor the lives of trans community members lost to violence, and it's up to all of us here to carry on that work. To that end, I'm pleased to present the Governor's Transgender Day of Remembrance Proclamation to the MNclusive co-chairs, Kestrel Baker and Sheena Jewison. Sometimes, y'all, I'm asked to read some of a proclamation. Sometimes we're asked to read all of it. And on a day like today, and in times like the now, I think we're gonna read the whole damn thing. In my community, we do a lot of call and response. And something that I learned from Senator Bobby Joe Champion is a way to make space for the voices in the room right now. So when I go like this, if you'd like to say with me, whereas, we're gonna keep building and remember all the individual bricks that it took to get us this far. So, Transgender Day of Remembrance began in 1999 as a vigil organized to honor the memory of Rita Hester and Chanel Pickett, two Black transgender women murdered in acts of anti-transgender violence, and whereas, crushed it. Transgender Day of Remembrance has become an annual observance in November that honors the memory of transgender people around the world whose lives were cut short by anti-transgender violence. And the annual observance provides a platform for transgender communities and allies to raise awareness about the ongoing threat of violence faced by transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and two-spirit people. And In April 2023, these bills were signed, excuse me, let me go back one. Transgender people are disproportionately affected by hate crimes, violence, and experience compounding challenges in their daily lives due to discrimination, disproportionately high levels of unemployment, and limited access to health care. And in April 2023, 3 bills were signed into law in Minnesota to ban the practice of conversion therapy, protect people seeking gender-affirming health care, and create the Council on LGBTQIA2S+ Minnesotans. And Minnesota celebrates our family, friends, neighbors who identify as transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and two-spirit, and is committed to ensuring that Minnesota is a place where people will continue living their fullest lives. And finally, Minnesota continues to honor the memories of transgender people whose lives were taken by anti-transgender violence while uplifting and celebrating the enduring contributions of transgender people in our communities alive here and now. Thank you so, so much to MNclusive, to all the folks that are here today for continuing to stand up for trans Minnesotans.
Ashley, thank you so much for your remarks. The support of the state is immeasurably valuable. If you'll please join me in welcoming to the stage State House Representative Lee Finke.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, can everybody hear me okay? Great. My name is Lee Finke. I use she, her pronouns. I represent District 66A in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Yeah, 66A. Yeah, and I'm grateful to be joining you on this morning, Trans Day of Remembrance. I'm going to check my phone a couple times as I go. This is my least favorite day to speak, but we have to do what we're here to do. I want to start by just saying that I am grateful for everything everyone has done to support the work that we, as a state, have done to protect transgender people. We have done as much as anyone in the country, if not the most, to create a vibrant trans safety network in the state of Minnesota. We passed a trans refuge law. We passed laws protecting trans people from conversion therapy. We passed, as you heard, the panic defense and guarantees for gender affirming care. And we passed gender inclusive bathrooms. You know, we really are moving policy forward in the state with the support of our governor and lieutenant governor and our colleagues in the Senate. So we have a lot to be proud of in the state of Minnesota. But culture is not policy, right? And policy can't change people's hearts and minds just by the fact of its existence. So we're here today to commemorate nationally those we have lost from our community. It's too many. And we're here to remember those in our own communities who we have lost, who are trans, to violence. You know, there's no shortage of violence against trans people in our state. And I want to particularly call out, just before I move on to the meat of my remarks, I want to call out in memory of Liam. Liam's birthday was yesterday. He would have been 13. He would have been alive in a different circumstance, but he is not. And there's very little that can possibly be said to a family or to a community about the death of a child, other than for us to sit with the pain of it and to know that this is the work we are trying to do. We are trying to make it so that this never happens again, despite the fact that we know that Liam is not alone. He was here. He was a member of our communities. He was going to school here in the metro, in the safest state in the country for trans people, and he's dead. And we all need to sit with it and recognize it and think about what it is that brought that circumstance forward and how we can make sure no family suffers like this again. I also just want to remember Sam Nordquist. Sam was a indigenous trans person who was murdered up in the Finger Lakes in New York after being tortured for what seems like perhaps months by people he met on the internet. And those people were, at least some of them, also LGBTQ, right? The violence against trans people is extremely complicated. And I think importantly, it is not unique in the world. It is important for us to have this day for us to gather, but it is important for us also to remember that trans people are people, and the violence that we suffer is not violence that does not exist in the world. Most people who die, most of the community members that we lose to people who they know. That is very common. In the world of domestic violence, most victims are people that you know. The most likely person to murder a woman or gender non-expansive person is someone that they live with. We're not facing a unique threat in that way. We also know that something like 68%, I have the numbers, but I'm not going to look. I think it's 68% of trans people who die are killed by guns. Gun violence prevention is all the talk in the state of Minnesota right now, and it should be after the nightmare summer that we just survived. It's not unique. Gun violence is a problem. Of course we are affected by it. We also know that most of the trans people who die by violence are people of color. And more than 50% of them are specifically Black trans women. We need to do more to recognize and wrestle with that fact. I don't see any Black trans women in this room right now. I could be wrong and I apologize, but that's a problem. That's a significant problem that we have to face. There is an idea in the world that identity, like trans identity, is like kind of a niche, right? Transgender, non-binary, gender expansive, two-spirit. This is like a niche, white, upper class concept. And that idea is used to dehumanize, belittle, and degrade trans people in society. But you should know that it's false. White people are not more likely to identify as trans and non-binary than Latin people, than indigenous people, or API people. And Black Americans are only slightly less likely to identify as trans and non-binary than white people. And yet somehow we end up in spaces where white people talking to white people about the death of Black trans women is the circle that we just get stuck in. And this isn't to blame anyone. I'm not sure how to fix this problem. I don't know what the solutions are. But I know that I carry a lot of weight about the laws that we have passed, and my trans and non-binary colleagues have passed. Representative Breon Curran, who I saw somewhere, is here. Representative Leish Kozlowski, who is in Duluth. We take a lot of responsibility for the laws that we pass. We have told people, come to Minnesota. We will protect you. Our governor went to other states and he told trans kids, come to Minnesota and we will protect you. And we have to make good on that promise, and we have to make good on it for everyone. It's a huge responsibility to know that what looks like very tiny population of people is coming to your state because the actual entire federal apparatus is bent upon our eradication. That's not hyperbole. The very first day of this administration, Donald Trump signed an executive order that eliminated the existence of transgender people from federal rules and codes, right? There is no designation of transgender people in the federal government. Have we sat with that? Have you sat and thought about what that means for us? They're destroying healthcare. They are going to take it away, one way or another, unless we mount Herculean efforts to stop it. They are going to invalidate our passports unless we make Herculean efforts to stop it. The intention here is not hidden. This is Trans Day of Remembrance. Things are getting worse, friends. I'm not known for my optimism. We're doing everything we can. We will protect everyone we can to the absolute utmost of our capacity in the state of Minnesota. You should come here because it's safer, but it isn't safe because it can't be safe. We can't say it is safe to be trans in the state of Minnesota. Liam's parents can't say that. Savannah Ryan's friends and Sam Nordquist's friends, they can't say it. We know what the world looks like. And so I want to close by reminding us that despite everything that I have just said, I actually think transgender people are the most optimistic people on the planet. Because there is young trans people and old trans people who are coming out, who are transitioning, who are saying in the face of government eradication and violence and death and rejection, I'm trans and I am going to transition. And the act of doing that in this moment, at this time, in this country, it means that you still believe you can do better. Life can do better. People, culture, laws, communities, religions, schools can do better than they are doing now. Because if we did not believe that, we would not do this. We do what we have to do to survive, and for us to survive, it means transitioning in the face of all of the odds to stop us. So if you are not a trans person, and odds are most of you aren't, please listen to your trans friends, family, and if you don't have either, listen to the trans people in the spaces around you. Because we're there, and the fact of our existence should astonish you. It is miraculous that not only is the trans community fighting, but we are growing. We are strengthening our resolve. We are building our support, even as we have Democrats, national Democrats, who want to lead the party, who are saying to the country, we should probably weaken our support for transgender people, even in the face of everything that has nothing to do with us. We are trans. We transition. We are non-binary. We live our authentic lives. We are two-spirit, and we live our full selves in the world. And everything else can be damned. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for seeing our community. Thank you for loving our community. There can be no quarter in your lives for anti-trans rhetoric or for the rejection and dehumanization. If you are here, that means when you leave this building, you are absolutely obligated to fight against anti-trans rhetoric and politics everywhere that you go. Everywhere that you go, I am tasking you with that. Otherwise, don't come here. All right? We love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. We'll keep fighting. Stay safe. Keep fighting.
Powerful words from Representative Finke. If you will please join me in welcoming to the stage the past president of MNclusive, Krista Mosang.
Thank you, Representative Finke. I appreciated your comments, particularly about our ability in the state of Minnesota to protect trans people from the federal government. I'll be talking about the law, so I appreciate that lead in. In a time of misery, joy is a weapon and self-assurance is a shield. I'm going to come back to that line later, but I wanted to make sure to start with it. I offer it as a life preserver as we walk face first directly into the fire hose together. This vigil exists to recognize our trans siblings whose voices were untimely silenced, who became casualties in a war against transness that cannot be won. We speak today for those who cannot speak because they are dead. Today, I'll illuminate the nexus where trans lives and the law meet in 2025. Professionally, I'm someone legally required to be learned in the law. My position requires me to yield some liberty to speak freely in public in order to be a public servant. That's not a complaint, but at today's event, it is offered as something of an apology. Stridency won't be one of my tools today. That said, I have recently found myself in rooms where everyday lawyers have had to come to terms with our professional roles as guardians of the law. As lawyers, we've been collectively stunned to find ourselves needing to publicly promote the rule of law and to justify doing so to people who worry that promoting the rule of law is now suddenly partisan. That's how far we've fallen since I stood here last year at the podium. The last 12 months have been marked by policy and court decisions that offer up trans bodies our dreams of safety and happiness and ultimately our existence as sacrifices. But connecting most trans deaths from suicide or violence to the law requires an inference. A simple inference, though the gap allows people to deny the inevitable intended result. The inference is this, that a person intends the natural and probable consequences of their actions. This is a familiar phrase to those of us that studied the law. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall once described it as perhaps the oldest rule of evidence. 1 year ago, I stood here and highlighted federal public health objectives to reduce bullying and suicidal thoughts in transgender children and teens. I predicted that those objectives would not last long past January 2025. In fact, the current administration removed those objectives by February 1st. In fact, implementing an executive order that was signed on day one. The administration was forced to republish the objectives by a court injunction. It did so, but not without prominently disclaiming the information. This created an absurd spectacle of a government arguing with itself about the public health merits of reducing bullying and suicidal ideation. I'll repeat that. The government is debating the public health merits of reducing bullying and suicidal ideation. If a person intends the natural and probable causes of their actions, I will let you decide for yourselves whether an intended result of abandoning an effort to reduce suicidal ideation is death. This federal government uses the nexus between trans people and the law as a bludgeon to negate, deny, and frustrate our existence, to deprive us of freedoms that everyone else enjoys, and to make our lives less safe. This is not news to most of us here. It is our daily lived experience. It seeps into our bones, and we carry it with us everywhere we go. Into courtrooms and churches, into classrooms, clinics, and our workplaces. As so many in the rotunda today know, it contributes to an atmosphere of hostility and private harm well beyond the direct effects of any law. Trans people experience violence, risk of mental illness, economic insecurity, and poverty at higher rates than the general population. Ignoring that truth or stymieing efforts to measure and quantify it doesn't make it go away. So I'll return to my initial quote. In a time of misery, joy is a weapon and self-assurance is a shield. A blogger wrote it about the mayor-elect of New York who embraced the trans community during his campaign. Facing an executive branch that wishes to define us out of existence, our continued joyful existence defies and subverts the attempt. A federal administration that pardoned more than 1,500 legally convicted rioters casts mere trans existence as a peril so serious it had to be addressed on day one. A federal administration whose Justice Department has multiple federal judges openly questioning its credibility wants the world to believe that transness is incompatible with honor and truthfulness. Whether or not these things make us angry, we must also laugh at them because they are absurd. If the federal executive orders tomorrow that up is down, we must maintain the self-assurance to keep pointing out that it isn't and refuse to deny the evidence of our eyes and ears. And we will, I will, consistent with my professional duties. And I invite you to join me in every possible way that you can, because collectively we must defiantly pursue happiness for our siblings whose opportunity was taken from them. Thank you.
As someone who's also a lawyer,
Yep.
please join me in welcoming to the stage, from the Council on LGBTQ2S+ Minnesotans, Theo Cascio.
Good morning. My name is Theo Cascio. My pronouns are they, them, and he, him. And I'm honored to speak with you today as the chair on the Council of LGBTQIA2S+ Minnesotans. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to MNclusive and all the speakers today. If you were here last year, I stood before you to speak about my story, what it meant to be seen as a transmasculine person of color in a world that often tries to erase us, a world that at one point nearly cost me my life. That moment was deeply personal, as I spoke of my resilience, of survival, of the quiet victories that come with simply being seen. But today I speak not only from my experience, I speak from urgency. We are gathered here at the Minnesota State Capitol, a place meant to represent justice, protection, and the promise of equity for all. And yet, we do so in a time of escalating danger. The rhetoric being produced across the country, and yes, even here in Minnesota, is not just divisive. It is violent, it is calculated, and it is putting trans and two-spirit people's lives at extreme risk. This rhetoric doesn't just live in headlines or political speeches. It trickles into classrooms, clinics, courtrooms, and homes. It emboldens those who wishes to harm us and isolate those who are already vulnerable. It tells our youth that they are problems to be solved instead of children to be protected. It tells our elders that their legacies are disposable, and tells all of us that our existence is up for debate. This year alone, we've seen a surge in anti-trans legislation, attacks on gender-affirming care, efforts to silence our stories. We've watched as trans youth are vilified, as drag performers are criminalized, and as Indigenous communities are denied the right to honor their two-spirit relatives. These are not isolated incidents. These are part of a broader campaign to erase us. We are here today to remember those we've lost. Sam Nordquist, an Indigenous Black trans man tortured and murdered. Aubrey Dameron, a missing and murdered two-spirit relative. Kelsey Elm, a Black advocate killed by domestic violence. And many more trans and two-spirit people whose lives were cut short by hate, by neglect, by systems that failed to protect them. We say their names, we light candles, we mourn, But remembrance alone is not enough. Not anymore. We must name the harm, not just the physical violence, but the legislative violence, the rhetorical violence, the cultural violence, the kind that shows up in school boards, in courtrooms, in newsrooms, and in dinner table conversations. The kind that tells trans people we are dangerous simply for existing. The kind that tells two-spirit people that their sacred identities are myths. The kind that turns our lives into political talking points. This rhetoric is not abstract. It is not theoretical. It is killing us. And we must respond not with silence, not with politeness, but with protection and voice. We must build networks of care that do not rely on institutions that have failed us. We must fund mutual aid. We must protect our elders and uplift our youth. We must center Black and brown trans folks and two-spirit leaders in every conversation about justice. To my trans and two-spirit relatives, you are sacred, you are powerful, and you deserve to live without fear. Whether you are out or not, visible or not, your existence is valid. Your joy is revolutionary, and your survival is resistance. To our allies and elected officials, your support must be more than symbolic. It must be structural. It must be sustained, and it must be loud. Silence is not neutrality. It is complicity. So let this day be more than a memorial. Let it be a turning point. Let it be a moment we say no. No more. No more erasure. No more violence. No more waiting. We will protect each other. We will build systems of care. And we will fight for a future where trans and two-spirit people are not just remembered in death, but celebrated in life. So please, may we carry this commitment forward, not just today, but every day. Thank you.
Theo, as always, thank you. Dr. Cade Gepford, the Chief Education Officer and the past Chief of Staff for Children's Minnesota, the Medical Director for Children's Minnesota's Gender Health Program, and a pediatrician in the Children's Minneapolis Primary Care Clinic, is unable to make it today. We hold them and their family in our thoughts. In their place, Dr. Gepford's statement will be read by Maya Sarkar from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and a member of MNclusive. Please join me in welcoming Maya Sarkar to the stage.
Dr. Cade Gepford is the Chief Executive Education Officer and the past Chief of Staff for Children's Minnesota, the Medical Director of Children's Minnesota Gender Health Program, and a pediatrician in the Children's Minneapolis Primary Care Clinic. They have been at Children's for the last 18 years, and in that time have been an advocate for advancing equitable health care for all children. Dr. Gepford has a passion for working with underserved and at-risk kids and families, speaks Spanish and cares for a diverse community of patients in both the primary care and gender health settings. Here are their words for today. I wish I could be with you today, but I am with family after the sudden and unexpected loss of my father. What I wish for our community on Trans Day of Remembrance is that we all get the chance to live our lives to the fullest, to live without fear, to be remembered and celebrated and grieved at the end of our lives for who we were, our character, relationships, accomplishments, and community. We deserve more than being remembered out of tragedy for what we endured or how our lives ended. And what I wish for our youth and the patients I have the gift of supporting in our clinic is more than just survival. The bar for their future needs to be so much higher. I don't want to just make sure they survive. I want to know, without a doubt, that they will have every opportunity to thrive. The future I will continue to work for is one in which all young trans and gender diverse folks will be celebrated for exactly who they are, and where our goal isn't just keeping them alive, it's supporting them to be the best version of themselves and to achieve their wildest dreams. To all those who came before and whose lives we remember today, thank you. And to the young folks listening today, we've got you. You deserve the future our ancestors dreamed of, and we won't stop fighting until we know you have the health care, education, support, and opportunities you need to grow up happy, healthy, safe, and strong. Thank you, Dr. Kate Gepford, for those words.
We are nearing the end of our program today. It's common to end remembrance events with a moment of silence and a call to action. And I struggled with that this year. The right words to meet the moment are hard to find. Last year I spoke with a message to return to love, love of ourselves and love of our communities, and that has not changed. I still want to believe that love will be enough. When we say mourn the dead, fight like hell for the living, we have to keep those as two separate ideas and do both with love. Trans existence is uniquely beautiful. It's a wonderful experience to behold and live. It is a radical claiming, reclaiming, and healing act. A healing of the self against a world that fights trans existence with thousands of cuts, small and grievous. Our lives are precious, and to mourn with love, we must allow ourselves to feel the gravity of that loss, and we must hold that grief. It is absence for which there are no adequate words. In that spirit, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We mourn our dead in love, and in love we fight for the living. But to give ourselves and our community the love we need, we must acknowledge the truth of the world we find ourselves in. And since last year, there have been increased efforts to erase the history of transgender people, to put our existence beyond the recognition of government, and to drive us further from the society of which we are an integral and eternal part. Using their own words, let us call this what it is: an international beginning of a coordinated campaign of eradication. This campaign disproportionately is affecting our trans youth, And it is especially affecting our BIPOC trans siblings who face additional discrimination and exclusion. The measure of the task we face is stopping that campaign. And so we must say to those who would drive us from this world, not one step further. And this is not a small endeavor. However, it is what this moment requires of us. So let us meet this moment together. We must fiercely love ourselves and our communities, and we must zealously defend trans existence for all trans people. We already know we can change minds and fix hearts. We all know that if we do what is required, then we will prevail. So let us do that work and let us prevail. Just by looking around this room, I know there is love enough in the world that we can do this. Let us go and create a world that is both just and joyous for all of our trans siblings. I leave you to do that work with love together. Thank you all. I want to thank the organizations that are in attendance, elected representatives, members of the press and media, our wonderful interpreter, Nick. Give them a hand. Thank you all for being here. This work will not be easy. We are going to have to fight, but we are going to win. But we are going to have to fight. But we are going to win.